Hello, I'm Tita Beaven from the Department of Languages at the Open University. Welcome to the second episode of Talking Languages, our podcast series about language learning. In the first episode, we heard about why people learn languages. For me, it was personal. My father's English, my mother's Spanish, so languages have always been part of our family. Like many other bilingual children, I grew up taking language learning for granted, and I remember finding it bizarre that some of my friends only actually spoke one language. In this episode, I talked to James Coleman, Professor of Language Teaching and Learning at the Open University. To start with, I wanted to know why Jim became interested in language learning in the first place.
I think, like a lot of people who come from Wales, that initial exposure to bilingualism is extremely important. I am an English native speaker, but I've learned Welsh from the age of 7, and that was what triggered an interest in foreign languages, which has continued ever since.
Jim is an expert in the field of studying abroad and knows a thing or two about discovering other cultures.
I find study abroad a fascinating topic. I'm writing a book on study abroad at the moment. But one of the things that recurs all the time, and which I have in my own experience, is our emotional reactions to being abroad and trying to operate in a foreign language context where you don't have the same control over the language as you do in your own language. One thing I remember very clearly is trying to open a bank account and not really understanding what was required and feeling hurt and angry and hostile as a result of my own failure to communicate and to understand what was required of me. And managing that kind of emotional response to being in a foreign culture is a very important thing to learn to do.
So, living abroad can be a frustrating experience. But what do foreign students who are spending time in the UK find difficult? I asked a couple of Chinese students to tell me about their experiences.
I remember 5 years ago when I first arrived in the UK. I lived in Manchester. One day I went to an open market and went to buy some grocery, vegetables and fruits. Then the vendor said to me, "Love, what do you want?" And I was really shocked and embarrassed. So I ran away without anything. I feel really strange. I only want some fruits and vegetables. Why this man call me love?
Yeah, before I came here, I thought my listening was kind of good. But once I arrived and I asked a lady, what time is it, and she answered what time it was, and I couldn't catch at all. I was so shocked. I was so scared. The very strong British accent really scared me.
Well, it is clear that language and interacting with people in real life can be a bit of a shock when you first go abroad. But what does the research tell us, Jim?
Trying to summarise the research that has been done recently on study abroad. First of all, it's a hugely expanding activity. People around the world are realising what they can get out of study abroad. And every year the number travelling goes up and up and up. Except in the UK, where I fear that we're becoming a bit more insular. But basically, people gain, first of all, the academic and the cultural knowledge that they gain from following courses in other countries. Linguistically, they also improve, especially in their spoken language and in an expansion of their vocabulary. They become more employable when they've studied abroad because they have this capacity to function in different linguistic and cultural contexts. They develop personally, they become more self-confident, more self-aware, but perhaps most important of all is that they become citizens of the world. They become less narrow in their outlook. They develop this intercultural competence, which means that they can adapt, observe accurately what's going on, and participate without making narrow judgments on the community in which they're living.
When I was a student, I spent a year living abroad. I was lucky enough to spend a year in the beautiful city of Bologna in Italy. It was, of course, a great way to improve my Italian, but it was above all a fantastic way to find out about other people, other cultures, foods, flavours, music, I loved it so much, I found myself going back to work in Italy after I graduated. My own experience of Italy had been very positive, but I wanted to find out what foreign students think of living and studying here. So I went to the University of Buckingham, where a lot of foreign students come to do a 2-year degree course, and asked them what they liked about studying in the UK.
Well, one of the things I love about this country is that you meet so many different people, and at the same time they're not treated as they're not treated differently.
Yeah, first of all, when you come here, you see so many different people, and it's multicultural, so many different backgrounds, and you see so many people which you would have never seen any other city. And then when you're dealing with them, you're facing different kind of how the things done differently if you compare it to your culture.
So, being exposed to other cultures is obviously something that can open your mind. But is there anything you should do in advance of such an extended visit abroad? Can you prepare for it in any way? I asked Jim Coleman about it.
If you want to ensure a successful period of residence or study abroad, I think preparation is absolutely crucial. And you should prepare linguistically, practically, academically, but I think above all you need to prepare emotionally. There will be times when you feel absolutely lost when you're abroad, and if you prepare yourself for that, then you can also prepare some strategies for dealing with these feelings of homesickness and loneliness and anger and whatever the feelings are. So I think the message is prepare for absolutely everything and then be prepared to be surprised. I think that in the way that they prepare athletes psychologically by getting them to think through the race ahead, it's also possible for students and others who are going abroad to think through what it might actually be like and the kind of things that they're going to want to do and the kind of feelings that this might evoke in them, so that when these things happen, it's less of a surprise because they have prepared themselves psychologically for difficulties as well as the good side.
When I lived in Italy, one thing I did miss enormously was, surprisingly enough, food. Not that Italian food isn't superb, but from time to time I have to confess that I would get together with my English friends and have a Sunday roast. And food is something that the students at Buckingham also talked about.
I mean, the first time you're like, fun, new food, new things, and you're like happy to try it. But after like months, you're just fed up with it, and I just want to back home. I just want proper food that I've been eating for all my life. I just want proper food from my mom. Even if you know how to cook, when you use vegetables or meat or anything like this, it tastes absolutely different, and not in a good way. Especially the tomatoes, because I'm from Bulgaria and we have wonderful tomatoes, big ones. Here you go to Tesco's, you buy tomatoes, and they all look the same, and the color is the same, the shape is the same, but they taste like nothing. They taste like feet.
So obviously small things, such as eating different foods, is something that you have to be prepared for. But what other things should you consider if you're thinking of spending some time living or studying abroad? I asked Jim for his advice.
I think be prepared to adapt. You've got to get away from that mentality that says this is the way we do it and this is therefore the only way we do it. You have to be open-minded. You have to be willing to, first of all, understand and then accept that each culture has different ways of approaching food, time, greetings, interpersonal relations, the conventions of work and so on. And I think if you're open-minded and you have your eyes open when you go abroad, then you will adapt and get so much more out of the experience.
Living abroad, especially as a student, was certainly a fantastic opportunity for me. And I have many fond memories of my year abroad in Bologna. And for students nowadays, let's hear it from them.
It's really, when you come here, your mind is changing a bit, it's reshaped, redesigned, and you see the things differently. And then when you come back home and you see what is going on there, and then you can compare. Before you couldn't compare because you've been biased by your own culture.
Going abroad definitely can open your view, and when I was studying in China, I didn't know so many things, but now I know a lot of things that even my parents don't know, and I have more higher view, more global view.
You go out of home thinking locally, but when you go back home after 2 or 3 or 4 years of education, you come home thinking globally.
Well, as we've heard, living and studying abroad can open your horizons, make you more aware of cultural differences and more competent at dealing with people from different cultures and backgrounds. So if you're about to embark on a period of living or studying abroad, or just thinking about it, have a look at our website, open2.net/learning. See you again soon.